taxes are a solution, and people hear that and they're like, oh my God, don't fucking tax me. This is not about people with £1 million. This is about people with 10 million quid. If you don't stop the wealth flowing to them, then in the end, they will have all the wealth. And taxes are the obvious solution, and there's a video on my channel called The Wealth Time Limit, which is kind of like just an idea to think about, which is zero tax solution. You just say rich people, 120-year time limit on wealth. So you can give it to your kids, you can give it to your grandkids. If they've still got it when you're 120, it's gone. So basically they have to spend it. If they spend their wealth, they sell the wealth, spend it, then what does it mean? It means people who are working end up owning that wealth. You need to, it's not popular, but you need to do some fucking class analysis. How do we get the wealth? I think focusing on flows of wealth, it really can clarify your understanding of the economy. Which groups are accumulating wealth? Which groups are losing wealth? And realistically, there's only two ways to do it. You either tax the rich or you make them spend a fucking massive amount of money. Remember, Rishi Sunak, £21 million a year passive income. And there's people out there much richer than Rishi Sunak, So, probably you need some combination of both, which is you need to aggressively pursue higher spending of the rich, and you do need to tax them more as well.
We'll talk a little bit more about the sort of competing political solutions on offer right now in the UK, but just to focus on Sunak for a second, because look, you had some pretty choice words. You've had some pretty choice words in the interview, but in the book as well about your colleagues on the desk, which you in varying shades describe as dysfunctional geniuses, public school boys, etc., etc., etc. Rishi Sunak, Winchester College, ex-Goldman Sachs, and I usually try and I almost shy away from being like, well, he's so inordinately wealthy, but as you actually demonstrated in terms of scale, there are plenty of people who are richer than him. But nonetheless, he's a very, very wealthy man. And I'm in two minds about whether that should be relevant to my analysis of him as Prime Minister, right? It's like, because actually, should you play the ball and not the man? Should you just think about his policies and his political solutions and disregard the fact that he is as wealthy as he is?
Yeah.
But I kind of am shying away from that more and more because I just, when you see him go into a petrol station, not know how to use a credit card, you're sort of thinking, well, how on earth can you have any idea about the sort of economic reality that most of the people in the country you govern are facing?
If you're me and you're somebody who has made an awful lot of money by betting for a long period of time that growing wealth inequality and growing capture of wealth by the very, very, very rich is destroying broad living standards, then of course you're going to be very worried when a man whose father-in-law is one of the richest men in the entire world becomes Prime Minister, right? And look, it's no surprise and it's nothing new that very wealthy people try and influence politics. What is new is them sort of directly becoming the politicians themselves. Look, I don't judge people based on how rich they are. I know there are good people who are rich people, and I know there are bad people who are poor people. I grew up with some of them. But incentives matter, right? If I'm right, okay, people can say I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, just call me a dick in the comments. If I'm right, and the problem is like growing wealth inequality, which is like growing wealth captured by the very rich, is a man who is worth 700 million quid and whose father-in-law is one of the richest men in the world likely to fix that problem? If you've got cancer and your doctor is a guy who's betting on cancer being the next big thing, he's got a lot of skin in the game here, and it's not in the right direction. And that doesn't mean he's a bad. I never met the guy, all right, and I've been critical of his policies, but this is not. I don't think we benefit necessarily by personalising things. It's a systemic problem, but if the situation is the super rich are doing well while the rest of us are struggling, he is undoubtedly super rich, and that it concerns me.
Well, let's talk about the policies then. Let's do that. And we live in a first past the post system here in Britain. It's virtually impossible for a party that isn't the Labour Party or the Conservative Party to govern the country. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see more and more flesh on the bones now as we approach a general election about what the sort of two competing economic visions are going to be. There's actually a fair degree of overlap. Keir Starmer suggesting that his Labour Party will actually adhere to the same fiscal rules as the Tories, at least for the first couple of years of a Labour government. but even from like a more philosophical or theoretical perspective, you know, it is broad stroke liberal market democracy, capitalist system. So, I mean, to start with, I just sort of probably just invite your general assessment of the two parties' competing economic beliefs and whether or not you feel like it's a legitimate choice between the two politically.
I mean, I don't think you'll find many people who disagree with the fact that there's very little distance between the two economically. It feels a little bit Coke Pepsi, doesn't it? You know, I think the Conservatives are very unpopular. Living standards have collapsed under their governance. That's pretty obvious. I don't see any realistic desire to combat inequality. There are some people that say, "Oh, but he's just pretending to not care about that when he gets in." And I think we'll get to test that out. I think very probably. I'll be very surprised if he does anything serious. But look, I don't want to kick on Labour. Listen, there's centre-left parties in power in many Western countries, including the USA, Spain, Germany. None of them are doing anything really serious about wealth inequality. And this is because not enough people think that the problem we are facing is fundamentally caused by wealth inequality. This is why I think the idea is very powerful. You know, I'm always reminded of Brexit. When Brexit first, at the time of the referendum, main three English political parties dead against it. Now you have the main two political English parties have to support it. Why? Because enough people said this is what we fucking care about. And you know, I'm not saying I'm a lover of Brexit, right? But this shows public opinion has power. There's a reason why billionaires buy fucking newspapers. You know what I mean? If you can control the public opinion, we do still live in democracies, you know. If enough people say we need to do something about wealth inequality, we'll get it. But, you know, I speak to Labour MPs off the record, you know. I'll be open to Conservative MPs, but none of them have messaged me.
Never got in touch yet.
None of them have messaged me yet. And, you know, some of them are like, yeah, you're right, you know, we need to do something about it, but we don't think it's a vote winner, you know. And whether that's right or not, you know, we the people of the country, and I'll do my bit, we need to persuade them, no, we think it is a fucking vote winner. And if we don't fix it, things will get worse. My real concern is Labour comes into power, they don't do anything serious about wealth inequality, living standards continue to fall, maybe at a slightly slower pace, hopefully. It's been fucking quick pace the last few years, so it better slow down. And then people say, well, fucking that didn't work. Centre-right doesn't work, centre-left doesn't work. We'll try something else. And, you know, you tell me what the most likely alternative is at the moment. You know, what are the other voices out there saying?
Well, you look at Europe and it's right-wing populism.
Yeah, it's you know, at best it's anti-immigration, but you know, those guys come in, they don't fix the economy. What comes after that? You know, it's hard not to be reminded of the early 20th century when you look at what's happening. If living standards keep falling, the centre will collapse, and when the centre collapses, to be honest, anything can fucking happen.
It's a very worrying thought.